This is HOA rulebook. I saved every receipt and every timestamp. My name is Dan, and I install cable and fiber in Burlington, Vermont. I moved here 2 years ago because the job paid well and the mountains were close. I settled into Autumn Ridge, a townhome community where the HOA name is longer than the actual list of things you were allowed to do. The Autumn Ridge Parking Compliance Association. I should have known from the name alone. The place looked normal at first, but the management company had handed the parking enforcement keys to the loudest person in the neighborhood, a woman named Pamela Perez, who went by Patricia and insisted everyone call her that. She was the community standards chair, which meant she invented guidelines on the fly and expected you to thank her for it. My job depends on reliable access to my van, clean schedules, and no surprises at 6 in the morning. On a cold Wednesday in late February, I woke up to the beep 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 of a tow truck backing into my assigned spot, and Patricia standing next to it with a clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve like it makes her official, smiling like she had just won the lottery. I stumbled outside in my work boots and jacket, still half asleep, and she did not even let me speak. "Patricia, what is going on?" I started, and she cut me off with a hand in the air. "I do not need your explanation, I need your payment," she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. The tow driver, a guy in a stained hoodie with the company name peeling off the side of his truck, was hooking up my van like it was already decided. I looked at Patricia and then at the van, and then back at her. "Payment for what?" I said. She tapped her clipboard. "Guest parking violation. Overnight vehicles require a valid guest pass displayed on the dashboard. Your van has been parked here for over 12 hours without authorization." I blinked. "I live here. This is my assigned spot." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that makes your stomach drop. Assigned spots are for personal vehicles. Work vehicles require a commercial vehicle waiver and a guest pass if parked overnight. The new guidelines went into effect at midnight. I stared at her. New guidelines. Midnight. She nodded, flipping a page on her clipboard. The board voted on it last week. Notice was posted in the clubhouse. I shook my head. I work 12-hour shifts. I do not go to the clubhouse. She shrugged. Ignorance is not an excuse. The fine schedule is $250, plus the boot removal fee of $175, plus the tow prep fee of $90. If you want to dispute it, you can file an appeal, but the fees are due today because the fine schedule changes at the first of the month and the deadline is tomorrow. I felt my chest tighten. That is over $500 for parking in my own spot. She tapped the clipboard again. Your spot. Your responsibility. The tow driver stood up and wiped his hands. "Ma'am," he said to Patricia, "I need written authorization before I finish the hook." She reached into a portfolio bag and pulled out a folded paper in a plastic sleeve. The tow authorization placard sleeve she keeps snatching back every time anyone tries to look at it too closely. She handed it to him without a word, and he glanced at it and nodded. I stepped forward. "Wait. Can I see that?" She pulled it back before I could touch it. "This is official HOA business. You can request a copy through the management company." The driver shrugged and went back to the van. I could feel my pulse in my temples. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the clipboard, the van, and Patricia. She did not flinch. "Make it public," she said. I love watching people get embarrassed. I did not have $500 to throw away on a made-up rule, and I definitely did not have time to miss a workday while my van sat in a tow yard. I called my buddy Liam, a CPA who lived 3 streets over and had been complaining about the HOA fees for months. He answered on the second ring, groggy. "Dan, it is 6:15. "I know," I said. "I need help. Patricia just had my van hooked because she says work vehicles need a guest pass now." There was a pause. "She what?" I explained the whole thing in under a minute, and Liam sighed. That is not in the bylaws. I checked them last year when they tried to fine me for hanging a flag. I do not care what the bylaws say, I said. She has a tow truck here right now. Liam was quiet for a second. Do not let them take it. Tell the driver you are disputing the authorization and you want to see the signed board resolution. I repeated it word for word to the tow driver, and he looked at Patricia. She crossed her arms. The board does not owe you a resolution on demand. This is an enforcement action under standing authority. The driver scratched his head. Ma'am, if he is disputing it, I am supposed to wait for written confirmation. She glared at him. You have written confirmation. I handed it to you. He looked at the paper again. This just says authorized by Community Standards Chair. It does not have a board signature or a date. Patricia's jaw tightened. That is all you need. The driver looked at me, then at her, then back at me. I am going to call my supervisor. While the driver made the call, Patricia pulled out a handheld plate scanner, held it low with the screen turned away, and aimed it at my van's plate like she was running me through a database. I do not know what she thought she would find, but she tapped the screen a few times and frowned. The driver came back and shook his head. Supervisor says if there is a dispute, we need a board-signed work order or a signed violation notice with a case number. Patricia's face went red. This is a signed authorization. He held up the paper. It is not signed by the board. It is signed by you. She snatched it back, folded it, and shoved it into her sleeve. Fine. I will get the board president to sign it and we will be back this afternoon. The driver unhooked the chain and my van settled back onto its tires with a thunk. Patricia turned to me and her voice dropped to something colder. You just bought yourself a bigger problem. I smiled. I will take my chances. She left and the tow truck rolled out. I stood there shaking, adrenaline still buzzing. Liam called me back. You good? He asked. For now, I said. She is going to come back. He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Yeah, she will. Listen, I have been looking at the HOA financials because they post them in the clubhouse every quarter. The parking enforcement line item has tripled in the last year, and the tow vendor they use is owned by the husband of the previous board treasurer. I do not think their contract was ever put out for bid. I felt a little spark of hope. That is a conflict of interest. Liam paused. Maybe, but you would need proof that the contract is still active and that they are getting kickbacks. I can dig into the public filings, but you need to start building a file. Photos, dates, emails, everything. I already started, I said. Good. Keep going. And get a copy of your parking permit and your lease assignment. If they try to say you are not authorized, you need to be able to show black and white that you are. I went inside and pulled every document I had. My move-in paperwork, my assigned spot number, my vehicle registration, my parking permit decal backing kept in a wallet sleeve, and my work van's commercial insurance card. I took photos of all of it and started a folder on my phone. Then I went to work, 2 hours late, and spent the rest of the day answering client calls while my brain spun in circles. When I got home that night, there was a certified letter taped to my door. I ripped it open. It was from the Autumn Ridge Parking Compliance Association, signed by Patricia and countersigned by the board president, a guy named Eugene who I had seen exactly once at a summer cookout. The letter said I was in violation of Section 12.4 of the parking guidelines. Commercial vehicles were prohibited from overnight parking without a waiver, and I owed the HOA $515 within 7 business days or they would file a lien on my property and send the balance to collections. I took a picture of the letter and texted it to Liam. He replied in all caps. The UI cannot file a line for a disputed parking fine. I wrote back, they just said they would. He called me. Dan, This is harassment. If you pay them, they win. If you ignore them, they escalate. You need to file a formal complaint with the management company and demand a hearing. I sighed. I do not have time for a hearing. My job is on the line because the HOA chaos keeps interrupting my work and sleep. Liam was quiet. Then make time. Because if you do not fight this, Patricia is going to do it to someone else next week. I filed the complaint the next morning through the management company's online portal. I attached the photos, the timeline, and a PDF of my parking assignment. 2 days later, I got an email from the management company saying my hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 7 in the evening in the clubhouse. I confirmed, and then I kept working. But Patricia was not done. On Friday, I came home to find a post in the neighborhood group chat, a message from an account I did not recognize, saying that a reckless cable van had been blocking fire lanes, speeding through the complex, and creating a safety hazard for children and pets. It did not name me, but it described my van's color and the company logo. Within an hour, there were 12 replies, all from people I had never met, all agreeing that something needed to be done. I screenshot the whole thread and added it to my folder. Liam saw it too and texted me. That is defamation. If she wrote that, you can use it. I was not sure it was Patricia, but the timing was too perfect. On Saturday, I went to the clubhouse to check the bulletin board. Taped to the wall was a printed notice, dated 2 weeks earlier, announcing the new parking guidelines. It was buried under 3 layers of flyers for yoga classes and book clubs, and the font was so small I had to squint to read it. I took a picture. The notice said that commercial vehicles required a waiver form, available from the compliance office, which could be submitted for review within 10 business days of the effective date. I had never seen a compliance office. I asked the weekend attendant at the clubhouse desk where it was, and she looked confused. We do not have a compliance office. Patricia handles that stuff from her townhome. I asked for Patricia's address and she gave me a look. I am not allowed to give out resident information. I nodded and left. On Monday, I got another certified letter. This one said that because I had not submitted a waiver application, my appeal was automatically denied, and the fine had increased to $650 due to late fees and administrative costs. I called the management company and got a voicemail. I left a message asking how my appeal could be denied when I had not even had the hearing yet, and I did not hear back. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the timeline, the fake office, the group chat post, the tow vendor. I got up at 2 in the morning and started writing everything down in a document: dates, times, amounts, names, photos. By the time the sun came up, I had a clean timeline packet with dates, receipts, permit confirmations, and photos. I printed it, put it in a binder with tabs, and made 3 copies. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmare tales. On Tuesday, I left work early and got to the clubhouse at 6:30. The hearing was supposed to start at 7, but Patricia was already there, standing outside on the exterior walkway as people arrived, greeting board members and handing out packets. I recognized Eugene, the board president, and 2 other board members I had seen at the summer cookout. Patricia saw me and smiled. Glad you could make it. I did not answer. I walked past her and went inside, but she followed. The hearing is outside tonight, she said. We are using the walkway so there is more space. I turned around. The email said clubhouse. She shrugged. Last-minute change. I looked at Eugene, and he nodded. We thought the fresh air would be nice. I could tell he was uncomfortable, but he was not going to argue with her. People started gathering. There were about a dozen residents, most of them older, a few of them clearly Patricia's friends. I saw the rideshare driver who lived in Building C, a guy named Marcus who I had talked to a few times in the mailroom. He was leaning against the railing with his arms crossed, rolling his eyes every time Patricia spoke. The board sat at a folding table, and Patricia stood at the end with her clipboard wrapped in a clear plastic sleeve like it makes her official. Eugene cleared his throat. All right, let us get started. This is a hearing for Daniel Carver regarding parking violations under Section 12.4. Patricia, you want to present the case? She nodded and launched into a 5-minute speech about how the new guidelines were necessary to protect property values, reduce congestion, and ensure emergency vehicle access. She said I had been warned, I had refused to comply, and I had created a hostile environment by threatening the tow vendor. I waited until she was done, and then I raised my hand. Eugene nodded at me. Go ahead. I stood up. I was not warned. The notice was posted in the clubhouse 2 weeks ago in small print under 3 other flyers. I work 12-hour shifts and I do not come to the clubhouse. I was not sent an email or a letter until after the tow truck showed up. Patricia interrupted. The guidelines clearly state that posted notices are sufficient. I turned to her. Where in the bylaws does it say you can change parking rules without a membership vote? She blinked. The board has standing authority under Article 6. I pulled out my binder and flipped to the tab marked Bylaws. Article 6 says the board can adopt rules for common areas. Parking spots are not common areas. They are assigned and deeded. Patricia's smile tightened. That is a legal interpretation, not a fact. I looked at Eugene. Is it? He shifted in his seat. I am not a lawyer. I nodded. Neither am I. But I did call one. I spoke to an attorney last week and she told me that assigned parking spots are appurtenant to the unit and cannot be regulated the same way as guest parking. If the HOA wants to restrict commercial vehicles, it has to go through a formal amendment process with membership approval. The table went quiet. Patricia's face was turning pink. That is irrelevant. You still violated the posted guidelines. I held up the timeline binder. I have photos showing that the notice was not visible, emails showing that I requested a waiver application and never received one, and a record of every fine notice I have gotten in the last 2 weeks. I also have a copy of the tow vendor's contract, which I got through a public records request to the management company. The contract expired 4 months ago. Eugene looked at Patricia. It expired. She did not answer. I kept going. The tow driver told me on the morning of the incident that he needed written authorization from the board, not just from the compliance chair. Patricia gave him an unsigned authorization sheet. The driver refused to proceed until his supervisor confirmed it was valid. The supervisor said it was not. Patricia tried to get the board president to sign it after the fact, but she never filed a formal work order. That means the tow attempt was unauthorized, and the fines are based on a violation that never happened. I slid the binder across the table to Eugene, and he opened it. The other board members leaned in. I could see them reading the timeline, flipping through the photos. Patricia stepped forward. This is a distraction. The violation stands. I shook my head. The violation does not stand, because your tow vendor does not have a valid contract. That means every tow you authorized in the last 4 months was done without HOA authority. If anyone paid a tow fee, they can demand a refund. And if you try to enforce a fine based on an unauthorized tow, you are opening the HOA to a lawsuit. Eugene looked at Patricia. Is that true? She opened her mouth, closed it, and then said, the contract renewal is pending. I pulled out another sheet. I submitted a formal complaint to the management company 5 days ago. They confirmed that the contract expired in October and no renewal has been filed. They also confirmed that you, Patricia, have been authorizing tows without board approval since November. That is 4 months of unauthorized enforcement. Eugene rubbed his face. Patricia, we need to talk about this in executive session. She glared at me. He is lying. The contract is fine. I looked at the board. If the contract is fine, ask her to produce a signed copy right now. Patricia did not move. Eugene sighed. We will table this until we can verify the contract status. The fine is suspended pending review. Patricia's hands clenched. You cannot suspend it. The deadline is tomorrow. Eugene looked at her. The deadline is set by us. We can extend it. Patricia's face went red, and I could see her jaw working. Fine, she said. But this is not over. The meeting ended, and people started leaving. Marcus, the rideshare driver, walked past me and muttered, "About time someone called her out." Liam had been sitting in the back, and he came up and clapped me on the shoulder. You crushed it. I exhaled. It is not done yet. She is going to escalate. He nodded. Yeah. But now the board knows she has been freelancing. That is huge. I went home and tried to sleep, but my phone buzzed at 11. It was an email from the management company, forwarded from Patricia, threatening to send my account to collections, even though the fees were disputed and under appeal. I forwarded it to Liam and to the attorney I had consulted. The attorney replied the next morning. This is a clear violation of fair debt collection laws. If they send you to collections while the dispute is active, you can file a complaint with the State Consumer Protection Office and possibly sue for damages. Keep all the emails. I screenshot everything and added it to my file. On Wednesday, I went to work and got a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered, and it was the tow yard. A woman on the line said they had my vehicle in impound and I needed to pay the release fee. I said, "You do not have my vehicle." She paused. "We have a white van, plate number ending in 473. I felt my stomach drop. That is my plate, but my van is parked outside my townhome right now. She sighed. Hold on. I could hear her typing. And then she came back. I am sorry, we have you listed as a pending tow from this morning. It looks like the order was canceled. I asked who placed the order and she said the Autumn Ridge Compliance Office. I thanked her and hung up, and then I called Liam. She tried to tow me again. He swore, "You need to file a police report." I called the Burlington Police non-emergency line and explained the situation. The dispatcher said an officer would come by later that afternoon to take a statement. At 4, a cop showed up, a young guy named Officer Brennan who looked like he had heard this kind of thing before. He took my statement, looked at the timeline, and nodded. This sounds like harassment. If she tries again, call us immediately. You should also get a restraining order if it continues. I thanked him, and he left. That night, I got a text from Marcus. He sent me a screenshot from the neighborhood group chat. Someone had posted a long rant about how the HOA was protecting a dangerous driver and ignoring safety concerns. The post included a photo of my van, parked legally in my assigned spot, with the caption, "Still here, still a hazard." I screenshot it and sent it to the attorney. She replied, "That is defamation and targeted harassment. Save everything. Consider filing a cease and desist." I drafted a cease and desist letter, had the attorney review it, and sent it certified mail to Patricia and to the HOA board. I got the tracking confirmation 2 days later. On Friday, I came home to find chalk marks on the ground around my van, labeled with times and dates in Patricia's handwriting. I took photos, and then I checked my van's dashcam footage. The camera had been running overnight, and it showed Patricia walking up at 2 in the morning with a piece of chalk and marking the ground, then taking photos with her phone. I could not believe it. I sent the footage to Liam, to the attorney, and to Officer Brennan. Liam called me. She is creating false evidence. That is fraud. The attorney emailed back. If she submits those photos as proof of a violation, you can use the dashcam footage to prove she fabricated it. Keep the footage safe. Officer Brennan called me and said he would add it to the report. On Saturday, I went to the tow yard to ask for copies of the work orders Patricia had filed. The clerk at the window, a tired-looking guy in his 50s, gave me a look when I explained what I needed. "You are the cable guy," he said. I nodded. He sighed and pulled up a file on his computer. Look, man, I am not supposed to tell you this, but your HOA file is a mess. Half the work orders do not have board signatures, and the compliance chair has been calling us directly instead of going through the management company. My supervisor is pissed because we are supposed to have a contract, and apparently it expired months ago and nobody told us. We have been towing on pure bluff. I felt my chest tighten. Can you give me copies of the work orders? He looked around, then printed 3 sheets and handed them to me. Do not tell anyone I gave you these. I promised I would not. And I left. The work orders were exactly what I needed. None of them had board signatures. All of them were signed by Patricia alone, and 2 of them had dates that did not match the violation she claimed. I added the work orders to my timeline and made another copy of the whole file. On Monday, I got a notice that the HOA was scheduling a second hearing for the following Thursday. The notice said the board had reviewed the contract status and determined that enforcement actions were valid under emergency authority. I emailed the attorney, and she replied, "They are grasping at straws." Emergency authority does not apply to parking disputes. Bring your file and be ready to present everything. I confirmed I would be there. On Tuesday, Patricia posted another message in the group chat, this time saying that a formal complaint had been filed against her by a disgruntled resident and that she was the victim of a smear campaign. She said she had devoted years to keeping the community safe and that she would not be intimidated by bullies. I screenshot it and added it to the file. Liam texted me, "She is trying to flip the narrative. Do not engage. Just let her keep talking." I followed his advice and stayed quiet. On Wednesday, I got a call from the management company. The woman on the line said that the board had requested a mediation session before the hearing and asked if I would be willing to attend. I said yes. The mediation was scheduled for Thursday at noon, 3 hours before the hearing. I showed up with my file, and Patricia was already there with Eugene and the 2 other board members. The mediator, a guy from the management company named Rich, explained that the goal was to find a resolution without going to a formal hearing. Patricia went first. She said I had violated the guidelines, refused to cooperate, and filed false complaints to harass her. She said she was willing to reduce the fine to $200 if I agreed to drop the complaints and sign a waiver acknowledging the guidelines. I waited until she was done, and then I said no. Rich looked at me. "You are not willing to negotiate." I shook my head. I am willing to negotiate, but not on those terms. I did not violate the guidelines. The guidelines were not enforceable because they were not properly adopted, the notice was insufficient, and the tow vendor contract was expired. Patricia tried to enforce a rule that does not exist, and she fabricated evidence to support it. I am willing to drop my complaint if the HOA agrees to 3 things. 1. Rescind all fines and fees related to this incident. 2. Remove Patricia from any role involving parking enforcement. 3. Adopt a formal process for rule changes that includes membership notice and approval. Rich looked at the board. Eugene shifted in his seat. We can agree to rescind the fines. The other 2 items require a board vote. I nodded. Then let us have the hearing. The mediation ended, and I went home to wait. At 6:30, I went back to the clubhouse exterior walkway. The board was already set up, and there were more people this time. I recognized a few faces from the first hearing, plus some new ones. Patricia was standing near the table, and she had a stack of printed photos in her hand, the conflict object. She was pointing at them and talking to Eugene in a low voice. I sat down and Liam slid into the seat next to me. "You ready?" he asked. I nodded. Eugene called the hearing to order and said that the board had reviewed the complaint and the response and that they were prepared to make a decision. Patricia stood up. "Before you do, I want to submit additional evidence." She held up the photos. These were taken over the last 2 weeks and show the defendant's vehicle parked in violation of the overnight guidelines on multiple occasions. I raised my hand. Can I see those? Patricia hesitated, then handed the stack to Eugene. He looked through them and passed them to me. The photos showed my van in my assigned spot, with chalk marks on the ground and timestamps written in marker on the pavement. I pulled out my phone and opened the dashcam footage. I would like to submit evidence as well. I connected my phone to a portable projector I had brought and played the footage on the side of the clubhouse wall. The video showed Patricia walking up at 2 in the morning, marking the ground with chalk and taking photos. The crowd murmured. Patricia's face went white. "That is edited," she said. I paused the video and zoomed in on the timestamp. The timestamp matches the metadata on the photos you just submitted. You fabricated evidence. Eugene stared at the screen, then at Patricia. Patricia, is that you in the video? She did not answer. Eugene looked at the other board members and they nodded. He turned to me. We are rescinding all fines and fees effective immediately. We are also suspending Patricia from the compliance committee pending an internal review. Patricia turned to me, and her voice cracked. You do not know what you just did. I looked at her. I know exactly what I did. I let her get the last word, because I wanted the last consequence. Eugene adjourned the hearing, and people started leaving. Patricia grabbed her bag and walked off without another word. Marcus came up and shook my hand. That was the most satisfying thing I have seen all year. Liam grinned. You buried her. I exhaled. It is not over. She is going to appeal or file something else. But the attorney called me that night and said, if she tries anything else, you have grounds for a restraining order and a civil suit. You also have enough to file a complaint with the State Consumer Protection Office. Do it. I drafted the complaint that night and submitted it online. The confirmation email said a case file had been opened and that I would hear back within 30 days. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the management company. The letter said that the board had voted to terminate Patricia's role on the compliance committee and that the parking guidelines were being rolled back pending a membership vote. The letter also said that the HOA had reached out to the tow vendor to cancel the contract and issue refunds to anyone who had been charged under the expired agreement. I called Liam and told him. He laughed. She is done. I asked what happened to the complaint I filed, and he said it was still being reviewed. A week after that, I got a call from a state investigator who said they were looking into the HOA's enforcement practices and wanted to interview me. I agreed, and the interview happened over the phone. I walked the investigator through the timeline, the fake compliance office, the expired contract, and the fabricated evidence. The investigator thanked me and said they would be in touch. A month later, I got another letter from the management company. The HOA had agreed to settle with the State Consumer Protection Office. The settlement required the HOA to adopt new enforcement policies, conduct an audit of all fines and fees collected in the last year, and issue refunds where appropriate. Patricia was required to resign from every leadership role in the HOA and was barred from serving on any committee for 5 years. The minutes record the reversal and the reason. I kept a copy of the settlement letter in my file. Liam came over that night with a six-pack, and we sat on my porch and watched the sunset. He raised his beer. To Patricia. I clinked my bottle against his. To bad rules and worse enforcement. He laughed. You know she is going to hate you forever. I shrugged. I can live with that. The next week, I ran into Eugene at the mailboxes. He nodded at me, looking uncomfortable. I just want to say, I am sorry we let it get that far. I did not realize she was freelancing on the enforcement. I nodded. I appreciate that. He sighed. The board is going to propose a new parking policy at the next membership meeting. We are going to make sure it goes through the proper vote this time. I thanked him and went home. A few days later, I saw Patricia in the parking lot, loading boxes into her car. She saw me and froze. I waved, and she turned away and slammed the trunk. I did not see her again after that. A month later, I got a refund check from the management company for $515, the full amount of the fines they had tried to collect. I deposited it and sent a thank you email to the attorney. She replied, "Glad it worked out. If you ever need help again, let me know." I saved the email. The neighborhood group chat stayed quiet for a while, and then someone posted a thank you message saying that the new parking policy had passed with 90% approval and that the compliance committee was being restructured with term limits and oversight. I liked the post and closed the app. Liam texted me a few days later. "Did you hear Patricia moved out?" I had not heard, but I was not surprised. He sent me a photo of a for sale sign in front of her townhome. I replied, "Good riddance." He wrote back, "Amen." The tow vendor sent a formal apology letter to the HOA and refunded every fee they had collected under the expired contract. The letter said they were reviewing their internal processes to prevent similar issues in the future. I kept a copy of that too. The state investigator called me one more time to close the case and said that the HOA had been cooperative and that no further action was needed. I thanked her and hung up. The whole thing took 4 months from start to finish, and I kept every document, every photo, and every email in a folder labeled HOA 2025. I backed it up to 3 different places just in case. The new compliance committee met for the first time in May, and they invited me to attend as a community member. I went, and the meeting was calm, organized, and boring in the best possible way. They discussed a proposal to add speed bumps, reviewed a request to allow backyard sheds, and voted to extend guest parking hours on weekends. No drama, no surprise fines, no tow trucks. I left feeling like maybe the HOA could actually work the way it was supposed to. Marcus ran into me in the parking lot the next day and said, "You changed this place." I shook my head. I just made them follow their own rules. He grinned. Same thing. I still see the tow yard clerk sometimes when I drive past on service calls. He waved at me once, and I waved back. I never found out if he got in trouble for giving me those work orders, but I hope he did not. The management company sent a survey in June asking residents to rate their satisfaction with HOA services, and I gave them high marks for handling the complaint process. I got an email back thanking me for the feedback. Liam and I still get together every few weeks, and he still complains about HOA fees, but now he does it with a smile. He jokes that I should run for the board, but I always say no. I do not want the job. I just want to park my van and go to work without someone threatening to tow it. That is it. That is the whole fight. The HOA tried to invent rules, enforce them without authority, and intimidate me into paying. They lost because I kept records, asked questions, and did not back down. Patricia thought she could bully me into silence, but instead, she got corrected by the HOA attorney in plain language, lost every position she held, and had to move out. The tow vendor lost their contract. The board learned that enforcement requires process, and I got my money back, my parking spot, and my peace of mind. That is how you beat an HOA that thinks it is above the rules. You make them prove it, you document everything, and you let the system do what it is supposed to do. Sometimes it works. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.